The following program contains adult language, poor taste in jokes, racial slurs, political slurs, slants, and all sorts of things that, if you are sensitive and have a delicate constitution, you should probably go watch Teletubbies. You were warned.
Hey kids, welcome back to Roto Talk.
Kids, welcome back. It is a gorgeous Friday afternoon. However, it doesn't look that bad from up here, but we've got like 40-mile-an-hour winds, and I'm going to try to run a boat later. We'll see. That's a recipe for flipping. But what I'm going to do today, about once a year, I buy Lipos. You guys know me. I'm not a big electric boat guy. But my buddy JJ Horvath in Florida, who you hear me talk about all the time, he has his own little RC boat website that he sells a bunch of stuff, and I get my batteries from him. You have to check his websites in the description. I buy my 6S's off of him, Gen's Ace 22.2. JJ's the guy I go to for setup tips and prop tips. The guy knows everything there is to know about that stuff.
That is a great responsibility.
Wealth of knowledge. So I do have two boats that I like to run that are electrics. My Zip Kits G30, which I absolutely love, and I even have blood on the side. I'm not even sure how that happened, but I'm always bleeding. And then my, what is that thing? ML Boatworks GSX 230, I don't know, 40, I don't know. But anyway, I love both those boats. So my last 6S was, I think I have one 6S in my truck. This is my Goose Chaser Armana, or whatever they call those things. Pretty cool. You know, I got a 6S in there that's pretty decent, but that pretty much lives in there. So once a year, maybe I'll buy two batteries. That's it. It's the only two electric boats I have that I run. I do have some others in here that are 4S, 3S, but I never ever run them. I don't want 1,000 Lipos. We've had this talk before. I'm not a huge fan of dealing with that crap all the time like I used to. But I had, hey, check this out. I finally burn up one of my Dremel tools. The brushes finally failed. Anyway, I had a request a year ago maybe. Say, hey, you know, I saw your soldering video from 5 years ago, which was like a really popular video. Like 1 million views or some craziness. There's like a lot. I don't know if it's 1 million, but I'll put it, if I can find it, I'll put a link. It's soldering for beginners. But I had somebody ask me, because I run bullet connectors on my Lipos for boats. Boats have such a high amp draw. Do not use this plastic crap. Now, if you're doing an RTR boat, like a pro boat, whatever, you know, boats that aren't nightmare fast or anything, not a ton of torque, okay, maybe these will work. These Tamiyas, is that what those are? I don't even remember. But for real boats, like, no, you melt them. So it can be hard soldering these things. Let me shut this door. It can be really hard soldering these because these are such a heavy gauge of wire. So I'm going to show you the two ways that I do that, okay? Now, first thing I do is I take our brand new battery and I'm going to cut one leg. Hang on. Sorry about that. Got kids and women running around. So, the first thing we're going to do, like I said, we cut one lead off. I usually start with the negative. Get rid of this. Do not pull. Yeah. It's one of those mattress things. Go to jail.
Hey, you! What kind of stinking maggot's meat is that?
Alright. And I take a small lead. I'm going to show you the first way I do this. And really, it just depends on my mood, honestly. Now, don't be tempted. It depends on my mood on which style of soldering I want to do, okay? So, usually what I'll do when I solder is I'll twist the leads, but I don't. I take some flux, okay? I usually don't use flux when I'm soldering, except for these. And big stuff, because I use rosin core solder. Okay, I get a good amount on there. All right. Then in this case, I make my Lipos. Here's a beat up 4S I use for starters. Male is on the negative. females on the positive. You do it any way you want. Just know when you start, all of your shit's going to be set up that way, okay? So my negative's going to get the male. And this is how I do it. You'll notice there's a hole here. Now what you can do with that is you can actually feed solder through that hole and do it that way, which I'll show you that in a little bit. So, but here's how I do it the fast way. Now, do not do this way unless you put resin on the end of that. I'll put a link to the description in there. Okay, rosin core solder. Do not ever use lead free. That's for sissies. Propane torch. Now, this is not MAP gas. I refill my own propane tanks. I've had this tank for like 5 years, and I have like 3 of them, and I just refill them with propane. I made a device. Well, I have a valve that I hook to a propane grill tank, and I can refill my old ones. So I can refill this for about $1 instead of buying a new tank for $12 or however much they cost nowadays. Okay. We're going to heat this guy up. Doesn't take much. We're going to solder that in. It's a lot of solder. Then I heat it back up to a melting point. Flash point, I should say. Try not to burn your face off. Kind of hard to do with one hand. Okay. Now, what that's going to do, I got a little bit of slop out there. It's okay. Takes a minute to chill out. You got to remember you've got a ton of heat on there. Oops, wrong one, dummy. All right. Now, the reason you want to use solder or resin on there, okay? Hang on, let me get something to cool that off. How's that for stingy water? It's out of my freak cleaner there. All right. So, the reason you want to use resin is so once you put that into the hot solder there, it's going to just wick right up into it, and that is a nice solid connection. If you don't use the resin, chances are good you're going to get a cold joint. Not going to be good. All right. So then we take some heat shrink. I make it longer than it needs to be. Usually I use marine heat shrink, which has a glue on the inside, and it's waterproof. Really great stuff. I'm out, so I'm using this. So I make them like that. Fancy dancy hair dryer. This is a heat shrink gun. I think I buy them for $12 off Amazon. Okay. Now, the reason I make it longer like that is so when I'm doing this one, I don't accidentally short out. You don't have to do that, but you'll see how I do this in a minute. Exact same principle. See, now I am in no danger of sparking, which is always fun to scare the shit out of you when you're when you're doing this stuff. Okay, let's do this one again. Okay, just like that, nice and neat. Same trick. Okay. Do it again. Like I said, this is one of 2 ways I do it. A lot of people don't like messing with the torch, and doing this one-handed gets tricky, and then you got a lit torch, and unless you got one of the fancy ones with a trigger. I'm old school. This torch end is like from the 80s. It was my dad's. I'm just too lazy to buy new. I bring it up to flash point. That's when the resin inside heats up. That's it. And try to hold it still until that thing cures up. Get somebody to blow. It's always handy if you have a blower next to you. She's out. She's on the driveway with the kids.
Give heed, you vermin. Here's news to your advantage.
Is the hangman dead then? Out with it then, Jock Nasty Face. Is it that your mother's turned into an honest woman?
Alright. Because if you wiggle it while it's cooling off, you can get a crack in the solder joint. and that's no good. Now, those of you that like living on the edge, what you could do, before you dunk it in water, slide the heat shrink over it, and it'll just go right to it. The problem with that is you better be quick and accurate, because as soon as it gets near it, it's gonna, I don't mess with that, okay? Now this one I bring right to that edge. Trying to have anything exposed. We can always trim it down. Now if you do a lot of wiring like I do, I'm always soldering RC stuff, or rewiring guitars, building guitar amps. I solder a lot. Okay, these are worth their weight in gold. Okay, then what I do, that one's perfect, right? And I take a razor knife and I cut right around that collar. Done. Perfect. Very, very nice. Okay, now I'm going to show you the second way. I will be right back. Right, the number 2 way. Now, one quick note. This is a little thing that I 3D print. I designed years ago, and you should print them out of TPU, which is the rubbery stuff, not PLA. This is hard, but print them out TPU, and what they are, they're just Lipo caps, and that way when you store them, they can't short out. Ground goes into here. Well, doesn't matter, and then you're safe. Okay. Anyway, so we're gonna do the exact same thing, only this time we're not using the torch. A couple of you out there are like, thank God. This time we're using soldering iron. Now, crank your soldering iron up as high as it goes. You want this thing to be beastly hot, okay? Now, luckily, these brass dudes transfer heat really, really well. So, this isn't a terrible process, but, this is not my favorite way of, I like using the torch. It's just much more convenient. But a lot of people don't have a garage. They do this stuff in their house, or they have a workshop in their home or something like that. So same principle. Okay. Trying to get any stragglers out there like that. Okay, I'm just going to cheat. And you might want to support the battery, obviously. So now what you can do this takes a minute. You want to get the solder rolling. Even though it's not going to absorb in there, this heats up the wire and the surface area that you're soldering into. So put a drop of solder on there. You can always clean it off later. Then what I do, I'm actually holding that wire in with the soldering iron. Okay. Then I bring the solder in through the side like that. And you're going to get an awesome connection. This way, in my opinion, probably better and more solid than the torch method, because you're bringing everything up to temperature at once. When you do the torch method, the reason I bring that to flash point, you heard me say I'm bringing this to flash point, is because that's when the resin core of the solder turns into, flash point, it melts, catches on fire. I know that sucker's super hot now, so when I slide in the wire that's cold, it's going to have a chance thermodynamically to dissipate heat into the wire before it gets cold. Okay, that's very important. If you don't heat that up hot, even though it's fluid, if you don't heat it up hot enough and you slide that in there and that cold wire hits it, it's going to just solidify, and it's going to be a shit weld. You'll be able to, as soon as it warms up, it'll pop out. You don't want that. Now if you look at this is a better method. Okay, it heats everything uniformly, and you are going to get a nice, I'm just going to use this whole thing, you're going to get a really nice joint, what they call solder joint, weld joint, whatever we're going to call it. It is a form of welding. I do welding for a living in robotics, so I deal with this shit all the time. So, same thing. Yeah, I stick it in there. High hopes. Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing with this side. Now you notice I always do the negative side first because in my case that negative side has this, and it's all cohesive. I can put that long piece of heat shrink on there and I can trim it off when I'm done. So what I usually do with this, and what I just did was wrong. I always have a tendency to twist and then solder, like if you're doing guitars and stuff, and the reason you do that is to keep the little strands from flying all over the place. That's actually a bad idea if you're using resin, because what happens is you almost seal that up, so you want to undo that so they're kind of free. Okay. And again, all this is doing is helping that solder spread and capillary effect go up when you're soldering anything with heat like that. That's what that does. Again, I don't usually use resin for anything else. Okay, so same. Oops, I just did it backwards. Dummy. Alright, so just like that. Now again, we're going to take this, put it here. Try to keep your stragglers low key. Alright, just like that. Now if you're doing a 6S, it's handy, okay, because it kind of stays by itself. But if you're doing a smaller battery, use a bar clamp. If you put this bar clamp real lightly, you don't even have to clamp it, just do that, battery's not going to fall. Okay. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to stick that soldering iron full heat right into there and actually pin that wire. Alright, and I'm going to put a little bit of wire solder on there, and again, all that solder is doing is increasing the heated surface area, and it's just going to help everything heat up faster. You don't have to do that, but I do. So right now, let's see if we can, yep, it's hot enough, it's sliding right in to that side. And the capillary effect, what you have with welding and obviously blood transfusions and things, but it's going to suck it right in. The oxygen's going to come out and then it's going to draw the solder up from the heat. Okay, and we are done with that. Now, where it does get tricky is if you are soldering, like you're doing a small boat, you're doing a little tiny, well, 3S gets pretty damn hot too, but say you're doing a little, hang on, a little dirty, but I built this for my daughter. She hasn't used it much, obviously. I built this in 2022 fiberglass hull, and this is a full-blown super boat. It'll run on 2 or 3S, and it actually flies. Got carried away with my phone, but anyway, you can see how I did that connector. It'll run two S's. No, this runs in parallel, so you can put 3 S's or 2 S's in there. So if you want to go with a smaller battery, which still build up a ton of heat, mind you, okay? If you want to go with a smaller battery, but just say you want to use an XT90, XT60 connector, and you use the methods I'm using here, you're probably going to melt the connector. You're going to get it so hot that the metal bit's going to fall right out of the plastic. These are a crimp style, it's kind of different. But anyway, I got to get some heat shrink. Those of you that are OCD out there in the world probably be really upset with me because I'm not matching the colors. And like I said, if you want to, you can do red and black or whatever you want, but these are polarized. You can't really screw them up. It's not like you're going to plug positive into negative, negative into positive when you're down at the lake, because one's male, one's female. Never, ever, ever make them the same. It's a sanity check. That's another reason I like the marine heat shrink. Just type in marine heat shrink on Amazon. It's the same shit I usually use, and it's got the glue in the middle. It's a bitch to get off, but it doesn't slide. Like sometimes this stuff will like heat up and out in the sun and slide. That sucks. Okay. Okay. And then we just give this guy a mullet. There you go. Done is done. as Forrest Gump would say, right? All right, that's it. Just a quick one. If the wind calms down, we're going to do another video today. Don't count on it, though. It is blustery out there. Don't think I own a boat that'll survive. Mono would, but it's stupid windy. But anyway, we have a thing coming up that's kind of an experiment that's going to be interesting, and it's going to be with a 6S, that orange hydro I showed you in the beginning. Going to be cool, or it's going to be cool either way. Might destroy the boat, but we'll see. So anyway, kids, keep tri-side up. Talk soon.